Chapter 5. Bone Replacement and Recovery. Emily drifted through a sea of darkness, her mind caught in the liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, between the person she had been and the being she was becoming. Time had lost all meaning. Days, weeks, she couldn't tell. Occasionally, she would surface, her consciousness brushing against the edges of awareness, only to be pulled back under by the weight of her body's trauma and the drugs that kept her in a state of forced sleep. The surgeries continued, even as she lay there immobilized. Her body had become a battleground, her bones broken and replaced, reshaped and restructured. The surgeons worked with the precision of sculptors, carving away her humanity piece by piece, leaving behind something new, something foreign. The medical team was relentless, performing surgery after surgery, each one inching her closer to the form she had so recklessly committed herself to. Dr. Thomas Reynolds was the architect of her transformation, leading the surgical team with the cold, clinical focus of a man who saw the human body as a complex machine to be re-engineered rather than a person to be preserved. "The shoulders are next," Reynolds said during one of the pre-surgery briefings, his voice flat as he reviewed Emily's chart. "We'll need to completely restructure the scapulae and remove the clavicles. The human collarbone is a major obstacle to quadrupedal movement. Without it, her chest will be able to narrow, and her arms, forelegs, will have the range of motion necessary for walking on all fours." Dr. Helena Marks, who had overseen Emily's psychological preparation, sat quietly in the corner, her eyes flicking between the chart and the surgeons. She had been Emily's advocate throughout this process, but even she couldn't deny the cold reality of what was happening. Emily's body was being dismantled and rebuilt, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the woman she had once been. "Are we confident the donor bones will hold?" Dr. Marks asked, her voice a touch softer, more human amidst the clinical detachment of the room. Reynolds nodded. "We've selected the best possible matches. The canine bones are smaller, but they're structurally sound. Titanium plates and screws will hold them in place until they fuse with her own skeletal system. The integration process is delicate, but her body's already showing signs that it's accepting the grafts." Dr. Marks exhaled, her expression unreadable. "And her chest? The ribs? We'll remove all of her human ribs and replace them with canine equivalents. This will allow her chest cavity to narrow, giving it the more cylindrical shape of a dog's torso. It'll be a gradual process, but it's necessary for her eventual transformation." The room fell silent for a moment, the enormity of the procedure hanging in the air like a physical weight. Emily was more than just a patient now. She was an experiment, a living testament to human ambition and the dangers of pushing the boundaries of medical science. Deep beneath the haze of unconsciousness, Emily's body was a battlefield of pain and healing. Her bones, once so strong and familiar, had been shattered, removed, replaced with pieces that didn't quite feel like her own. Her shoulders had been broken and reshaped, her collarbones removed entirely, leaving her chest feeling strange and vulnerable. The muscles in her arms had been stretched and reattached to the newly formed joints, forcing her body to adapt to movements it had never been designed for. The surgeons had been careful, meticulous in their work. They had to be. The integration of the donor bones was delicate, and any misstep could lead to catastrophic failure. But Emily was strong, her body resilient, even after so much trauma. Still, as the weeks passed, the swelling and bruising that covered her body began to fade, revealing the new structure beneath. Her chest was narrower now, the rib cage smaller and more compact. Her arms, once human in their proportions, were longer and slimmer, the joints angled differently to accommodate the eventual shift to quadrupedal movement. The physical changes were profound, but the real challenge lay ahead. Once she woke, Emily would have to relearn everything: how to move, how to balance, how to exist in this new body. It was 6 weeks after the first surgery when Emily first stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy and sluggish as though weighed down by the sheer effort of consciousness. She felt disoriented, her mind thick with the remnants of anesthesia and painkillers. The room around her was dim, the steady hum of machines, the only sound breaking the oppressive quiet. She tried to move, but her body felt wrong, heavy, alien. Alien. Where am I? Her memories were slow to return, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. The surgeries, the transformation, the decision she had made so recklessly, so confidently, now felt impossibly distant, as though it had been made by someone else entirely. She shifted slightly, wincing as a dull ache radiated through her chest and arms. Her limbs felt strange, too long, too stiff. Panic flickered at the edges of her consciousness. What have they done to me? The door opened, and Nurse Lillian stepped into the room, her quiet presence a small comfort in the overwhelming confusion. She approached Emily's bedside, her eyes kind but professional as she checked the various monitors and IV drips. "You're awake," she said softly, her voice cutting through the fog that clouded Emily's mind. "Just relax. Emily, don't try to move too much yet. You've been through a lot." Emily swallowed, her throat dry and raw. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper escaped her lips. "What? What happened?" Nurse Lillian smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You've been unconscious for several weeks. The surgeries went well, but your body needed time to adjust. You've been healing." Healing. The word felt hollow, meaningless. Emily could feel the changes in her body, the way her ribs pressed against her skin, the strange weight of her arms, the sharp discomfort in her shoulders where her collarbones had once been. I can't move," Emily rasped, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and frustration. "That's normal," Nurse Lillian reassured her. "Your muscles have been through a lot of trauma, and you've been sedated for a long time. It'll take time for your body to adjust to the changes." Emily's mind raced, the weight of the transformation finally sinking in. She had known, intellectually, what was going to happen. She had been briefed, prepared, counseled by Dr. Marks. But now, lying here in this strange, unfamiliar body, the reality of it was almost too much to bear. "I don't feel like myself," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Nurse Lillian's expression softened. "That's to be expected. Your body's been through a lot, Emily. But you're still you. It'll take time to adjust. But you're strong. You can do this." Emily closed her eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. She didn't feel strong. She felt broken, fragmented, as though the pieces of herself had been scattered and she didn't know how to put them back together. The next few days were a blur of pain and confusion. Physical therapists came and went, gently stretching her limbs, helping her sit up for the first time since the surgeries. Her muscles screamed in protest, her bones aching with every movement, but she pushed through, too stubborn to give in to the pain. Dr. Reynolds visited frequently, his tone clinical as he explained the progress of her recovery. "Your body is adjusting well to the donor bones," he said during one visit, his eyes scanning the charts. "The fusion process is going as expected, but it'll be a few more weeks before we can start with more intensive physical therapy." Emily barely listened, her mind too foggy from the painkillers and the overwhelming sensation of unfamiliarity in her own skin. Every time she looked down at her body, she felt a surge of nausea. Her chest was narrower, her arms longer, her fingers stiff and slightly curled as though they were already beginning to form into paws. She had asked for this. She had wanted this. But now, lying in the sterile hospital bed, her body wrapped in bandages, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Dr. Marks visited often, her presence less clinical, more personal. She would sit beside Emily's bed, her voice soft and understanding, as though she knew the storm that raged inside Emily's mind. "How are you feeling today?" Dr. Marks asked one afternoon, her eyes studying Emily carefully. Emily shrugged, or at least tried to. The movement was still awkward, her shoulders stiff and unresponsive without the collarbones to guide their motion. I don't know, she muttered. "I don't feel like myself." Dr. Marks nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's natural. Your body has changed drastically, and it'll take time for your mind to catch up to those changes. You've been through an incredible amount of trauma, both physically and emotionally." Emily bit her lip, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. You can," Dr. Marks said firmly, leaning forward slightly. "You've already come so far. Emily, this is just the beginning of the process. Your body will heal, and with time, you'll learn how to move, how to live in this new form." "I don't even recognize myself," Emily said, her voice barely audible. "I don't know who I am anymore." Dr. Marks's expression softened. "You're still Emily. You're still the person who made this choice, who committed to this journey. That hasn't changed. The physical transformation may be overwhelming, but your mind, your spirit, that's still yours." Emily swallowed hard, a lump forming in her throat. She wanted to believe Dr. Marks, wanted to believe that she could still find herself amidst the chaos of her changing body. But the fear lingered, gnawing at the edges of her mind. As the weeks passed, Emily's strength slowly began to return. The physical therapists pushed her harder each day, helping her relearn how to move in her new body. Her arms, now longer and slimmer, moved with an awkward stiffness, the muscles unused to their new configuration. Her chest felt tight, her ribs pressing against her skin in a way that was both painful and strange. But she kept going, driven by a stubborn determination not to give up. She had made this choice, and she would see it through. No matter how difficult the recovery process was, her body was healing, but her mind was still fractured, caught between the person she had been and the creature she was becoming. Every day was a battle to reclaim herself, to find some sense of identity amidst the overwhelming transformation. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Emily knew one thing for sure: there was no turning back now.